because we have quite a few people registered. We're live. My name is Stephen Picanza. I'm coming at you live from NJ Content Studio in beautiful Haddonfield, New Jersey, right outside Philadelphia, 90 minutes from New York City, 15 minutes from Philly. I'm here with the one, the only David Aaker. Sir, how are you? Where are you? What's going on?
I'm terrific. I'm in Northern California, just outside of San Francisco, and we have really blessed with just terrific weather and interesting places. I grew up in Fargo, North Dakota, and this is quite a contrast.
It definitely is. I have to ask you, like when Luis said, I got David, I know about you being in the branding industry my whole career, and I get excited. I'm like, holy shit, we have David Aaker going to come on the podcast. And I'm like, why? At this point of your career, like what else do you have to say? What's getting you jazzed and excited and getting out of bed?
Well, actually, for the last, it's now been 30, 35 years, I've got into branding. I started in the early 90s by sort of defining what brand equity was with my first book, Managing Brand Equity. And ever since then, before that, I was sort of all over the map. I was a quantitative model builder coming out of Stanford, and I was a statistician, really, and applying that to market research, to advertising, and to business strategy. And I would build quantitative models, and then in the late 80s, brand equity appeared, and my all over the map background sort of fell into place because I could draw upon strategy, I could draw on market research and advertising and so forth to try to understand what branding was all about. And since then, I've sort of devoted my career to spreading the word, to trying to get my ideas to influence the way companies operate. And so I'm delighted to be exposed to your audience, and because it's right in my wheelhouse as far as people that are going to be able to take these ideas and actually do something with them.
David, you're an inspiration to all of us. We're so excited to have you and to expose you to our audience. Someone who coming up, taking business classes and branding classes, I'm exposed to your work so long ago, and to be able to chat with you is definitely a career milestone for me. But like here you are, I mean, you're in a nice button-down shirt. I at 80, 85, 88, how old are you?
I don't keep track.
Why aren't you not on a beach, or why are you not in southern Italy sipping wine all day, talking about philosophy? What is keeping your curiosity
I'm not
as heightened as person. It is?
If I don't go to someplace that has a golf course and bike trails and hiking trails, you're
a nature guy.
Yeah, I don't know. What I'm not is somebody will sit on the beach. And I so enjoy branding. It's just such an interesting area, and there's always new ways to apply it. I've been working now on how to help politicians understand branding and communicate better, and gotten into short-termism in one of my latest articles. So there's always something to write about, and I had this blog that I do on LinkedIn that gives me an outlook for things that catch my eye, and it's just really stimulating and fun, and I get to talk to interesting people like you.
Well, I mean, likewise, and I think that curiosity. This is something that, like, here I am, calling a spade half your age, but I'm in the middle part of my life, right? And I start asking myself about what's keeping me going and all my curiosities and how things are changing. And, to be able to still be, top notch at the head of being able to still challenge your assumptions and challenge your ideas. And that's so important. And now that you've written, you've written millions of words. You can't even count the amount of words that you've written, but like close to what, 20 books?
Yeah, I'm in my 19th book now, and some of them have gone through 10 or 12 editions, and I've written a lot of articles, 130 or so articles, and
That's
I've written 400 blogs. So yeah, that's what I am.
You're a
I'm
writer.
a writer and sometimes speaker.
AI, we were talking beforehand, and the AI, you can't have a conversation these days without mentioning AI. You know that, I know that. It can design logos, it can write copy. Like AI can do a lot of things that us branders have held sacred for so long. But what is becoming more valuable now because AI exists? Like, how is the pendulum changing in real time from your point of view?
But of course, AI has helped market. Helps me. I can write now an article in 2 weeks. It would take me 3 months, and it helps the branding participant. The branding professional who can do research now, background research, much faster, much cheaper, and he can actually get creative ideas on the table, and which will help the creative process. So what it really does is make things faster and less expensive, which means um, that smaller units have access to branding sort of ideas and professionals they didn't have before.
Yeah.
Um, so that's one thing. But the other thing is, I'm writing an article now about the impact of of branding on on business strategy in two ways. One is that it really enables disruptive innovation based on AI, and
Mm.
second, it really helps people do the organizational transformation that nearly all firms are engaged in to adapt to AI. And branding can help enable both areas to work smoother.
But if you have a weak brand and now you're putting on all this innovation and all this technology, all these emerging technologies, is that actually enabling the brand, or is that just exposing how perhaps weak you were in the first place?
Well, it depends why it's weak. Is it lost energy? Has it lost relevance? And has it developed a reason not to buy? I mean, there's a lot of reasons to falter, and the 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 corrective strategy and strategic options will depend on which one.
Right, right. This is all stuff. Shameless plug here, everyone. And David, I'm excited to even announce this to you. But this coming November in New York City, we are throwing our second in-person event, our third edition in total of Branders Fest. This one is entitled Survival, and it's centered around how AI and brands need to, which brands are going to survive the AI era. Because what you just said, I think, illuminates it. Like, everything becomes quicker, everything becomes faster, but something is going to sacrifice, and something is going to falter if you don't have the right strategic rigor in the first place. And that really is what it comes down to. I always think about branding as so foundational. And when you start thinking about this idea of AI in branding, like that also is kind of doubling down and ensuring that your foundation can support the skyscraper. Skyscrapers aren't built in sand.
Yeah, well, I wrote a book called um, Game Changing Subcategories, or Owning Game Changing Subcategories. And it's all about branding and disruptive innovation. So, what I have said now is that one of the ways that AI can deliver value to a firm, and firms are very frustrated because they don't see the ROI value. But one of the ways you gain value is that you use AI to enable some disruptive innovation. And disruptive innovation is actually the only way to grow. It really is hard to find
Hmm.
spurts of growth that don't involve disruptive innovation. But uh, the 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 pace of disruptive innovation in the last 30 or 40 years is continually increased. And now in the last 5 years or so, it's ratcheted up even more. And now there's disruptive innovation all over the place, and a lot of the new stuff is enabled by AI. And so, what the point of my book was that you have to understand that disruptive innovation really has some. It requires branding. And if you look at the literature of disruptive innovation, all these books like Blue Ocean and so on, they don't even mention branding. Blue Ocean has a half a page where they talk about first mover advantage,
Advantage.
which actually doesn't even exist. And and the other books have nothing. They don't even have branding in the index. And yet, branding is crucial to disruptive innovation because when you're in a disruptor, you've got to one become the exemplar for the whole subcategory, which means that you can control it and manage its evolution over time. Second of all, you have to position the subcategory. You have to position it in the marketplace so it wins. If the subcategory doesn't win, your disruptive doesn't win. And the third thing you have to do is to own that disruptive, or at least you have to be the one of the most relevant and hopefully the only relevant brand for that by defining it with must-haves that you control and you've created and you're going to evolve over time. And so people have to understand that the big there's two kinds of return from AI in business, but the most important one is the disruptive innovation it enables you to do. And or it defensively, if somebody else does that, you have to become relevant somehow. And it's a branding issue, and branding is indispensable to doing that right. And so that's
So what
part
you're
of my
saying,
take
right?
on
So
AI. What?
since we all have access to being disruptive with AI, the brands that survive are the ones that actually have a brand built on belief, built on something that the audience can believe in, and that they own their position and own their category. Since we all have access to all this innovation quicker and cheaper.
Well, it's not so much what the challenge for most people is that you've got a brand already, and you need to either change that brand and make it connected to an AI must have, or you have to create a new brand that's related to your brand. It's in your family, but it's a new brand, and you have
Mm,
to use that as a vehicle. And in either case, you probably need some branded differentiators. There has to be there's some feature or something unique, some special sauce that you have included that you are making as a new must-have for the customers. You need branded, and
yeah.
uh, uh, I wrote a paper once on under branding. Are you under branding? Because too many people just talk about it. They have a narrative, they have passion, but they don't have a label or brand.
So that's on one end of the spectrum, under branding. Is there the other end of the spectrum, over branding?
Well, that's the everybody's talked about over branding, and that exists too, especially in the technical industry where people put a brand on anything. And
Right.
so you have to use discipline. But
Just
I think the far more important. I mean, over branding is an operational nuisance, and it's just
it
noise
is.
that you put in the thing, and you can live with it. But uh, the under branding means you missed an opportunity to own something really important. So it's just like any new product, you know. If you put out so many new products that fail, that's not good.
Yeah.
But almost always, the bigger risk is not putting out something that would have been a home run. And so anyway, that's why underbranding is often more important than the overbranding problem, which
So let's
certainly
meet it
exists.
right in the middle, right? We have under branding, over branding. Let's define from your perspective the one sentence definition from David Aaker on what is branding.
Well, I don't really define branding. What I find is brand equity. And brand equity consists of three things that you're trying to build, is to take the perspective that this is a long-term asset you're building. The first is brand awareness, but I no longer call it brand awareness. I now call it brand relevance, because you not only have to be aware, but you have to be relevant for the context at hand. I mean, everybody knows the name Hershey. They're visible, but nobody would buy a car named Hershey's. So you have to be both visible and credible. And there can't be
Mm,
any reason not to buy. Second is brand image. And this not involves more than functional benefits. It involves emotional benefits and social benefits and self-expressive benefits and different ways you can connect with a user. And the third, and most important, and if I made any contribution to branding, it was when I defined brand equity to include brand loyalty, because at the time, branding was consisted of awareness and image, which you delegated to an ad agency, and it wasn't even a subject in the C-suite. But when you
yeah.
add brand loyalty to it, then everything changes. The
Mm.
It does become a C-suite topic. It puts brands in a whole different context in the organization, because
But
now brands involved with strategy, because the 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 customer journey and the customer connection and the customer loyalty and the customer of being part of a brand community, uh, that involves everything in the organization. It involves new products. What new products? How do you put out the new products? How do you communicate with the customer,
right.
and
So
and
to your
everything.
point,
So anyway,
David,
brand loyalty is the third.
with brand loyalty, and then that all of a sudden piqued the interest of the C-suite. Why is it still an anomaly when the C-suite includes a chief brand officer? Why does that get delegated to probably the CMO or a different function, or it just takes a back seat?
Well, the CMO is usually in the C-suite, or the
Yeah, but the
VP of
CMO shouldn't
marketing.
be in charge of brand, right? Should the CMO, who has the fiduciary responsibility of dictating where that marketing spend goes and how that, that ROI of that market, that ROAS, like, but brand is something completely different. And should it be the same person? Is that unfair to the CMO?
I I I don't know the argument that would say that the CMO is not interested in brands or responsible for brands. Um, it does raise, though, the issue of what I call short-termism, where the pressure for short-term results are imposed on the CMO and the marketing group,
Right.
and they
Right.
want instant results, they want leads, they want sales, they want instant profits for this month's report, and uh, and so we've always had the specter of short-termism. And in my last article on this in the California Management Review, I talk about that we've been there before. The 1980s was a decade of short-termism. It was caused by the BCG matrix dominance and strategic theory, which is interpreted incorrectly, but interpreted by most as you have to build market share, and it didn't matter what brands you destroyed along the way. Whatever you could do to increase market
Right.
sales and market share was right. And then we had scanner data that allowed you to manage marketing scientifically, and you do experiments and you find the only thing that moves sales was sites off promotion. So they destroyed brands rushing to the promotion. The promotion went up from like 55% of marketing spend to 70% during that decade. And so at the end of the decade, people basically said, this isn't working. And then
Mm.
brand equity came along, and they were receptive to looking at brands differently. Um, and so the challenge is well, and not only that, but what's happened today is you've got these the you got analytics, you got big data, you got AI, and they're all sort of enabling a fresh energy into short-termism. And
Mm-hmm.
so,
That's right.
uh, uh, and not only that, you have today is that short-termism has got a brand, a very respectable brand, and it didn't have before. And the brand is called demand marketing, sometimes called performance marketing. Well, who could be against building demand or having better performance for your marketing dollar? So it's got a brand name, and sometimes in some organizations, it's even got an isolated, independent place in the organization, not under the control of the CMO or the brand guy. And so they go off and do brand destructive things. So the the solution is not to kill demand marketing because you do need short term results from
You
your
need
marketing
both.
spend, but you need both. And so they have to work in tandem,
Yeah.
and the demand marketing people have to use brand marketing in order to further their interest. In fact, we have research showing that if you take a demand marketing short-term sales oriented program, and you add to it a little bit of brand marketing flavor, like 30% or something,
Yeah.
it will perform a lot better in its
Right. Right.
short-term task than it would otherwise. So you try to get them to work together. And that's what really
That's the
smart
harmony.
marketing companies do.
Well, that's what we're all trying to figure out. What is that right formula for that specific brand and that specific moment in time? Because there is no one size fits all. David, I'm going to kind of just switch around a little bit with the remaining time that we have left. If a new marketer who's never heard of you picks up one of your books, which one is it and what edition?
Well, I had a hard time with that. I'm with a Profit, a consulting firm, and they and others would ask me, what of these 18 books do I read, or these 8 or 9 that are relevant to branding? And I used to go and take, well, you read this chapter here and these 3 chapters there. And then I wrote a book called Aker on branding. And that kind of summarizes all my thinking. And it just came out in the second edition last year.
Mm,
So it includes the last 3 books I wrote on branding and disruptive innovation, owning game changing subcategories, and a book on stories,
mm.
creating signature stories, and and a book on how you use social programs to provide energy and lift to your brand. And that's called purpose driven branding. So those 3 books are incorporated in the new edition of Aker and Branding. Um,
There it is.
and so, yeah, that's
That's where we start.
to 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 answer questions like that.
What is the one book you wish you'd written?
You know, if I wanted a book to write, I wrote it. I mean, and all
I
the
love
books
it.
I've written, it's because I got interested in an area. It wasn't because I thought this would be a big bestseller. I just wrote a book because I wanted to write that book. And I've never had a book that I wanted to write that I did not write. I just wrote it.
That's incredible. Fuck yeah. Overrated, underrated. What's the most underrated brand out there now?
Um, that's a really good question. Um, I think there's a lot of brands that are underperforming as far as their potential goes.
Mm,
And I would go into companies. I worked with some nonprofits in particular and ask, well, what is your secret sauce? And they can go off for 2 minutes and eloquently and passionately talk about what makes them different and better. And then I said, why don't you brand that? And there's an awkward pause, and
yeah.
and sometimes nothing happens. But it's amazing. You can brand a culture, you can brand
You
some
absolutely can.
values, you can brand, uh, you can brand what's your. I have a construct that I call silver bullet brands, and these are brands that sort of perform a really important function in a brand way. Like they're branded differentiators, they're branded energizers, or they're branded source of credibility. And I use Uniqlo as a good example.
Mm.
They branded their fabrics, they branded their culture, they branded their management style. They're just so good at branding. And I mean, this is a Japanese retailer with not much experience in branding. Although a friend of mine, Hiro Takeuchi, is one of their advisors, and I think he's responsible to some of their strategic thinking. But boy, they are really good at branding.
Yeah. But I mean, would you, at what point does being really good at branding become over branding? You talked about they were branding their management style,
Well,
their
a classic
branding.
example is high tech companies from time immemorial, because
Mm.
in classically branding doesn't have a lot of clout in a high tech company. It's first engineering, second maybe manufacturing, um, and third maybe partnerships. But branding and marketing is way down the list. And so when they come out with a new product, they would the engineer that did it would come up with a brand, and it would be a non-optimal name choice, but nobody was taking any interest in that. And by the time they got out, it's so familiar to them, and they just used that brand,
Yeah.
and they really didn't know what it stood for, except that they had some technological um, thing they were proud of. And so they do this again and again and again up from all over the organization, and it would become a mess. Uh, and one of the books I'm proudest of
Mm.
is Brand Portfolio Strategy, because there are no other books that I know of that deal with that issue. And that there's hundreds of books on branding and building brands and so on, but there is no other book on brand portfolio strategy, and it's so important. And because but anyway, in the company I'm with, Profit, one of the things we do is help people with brand portfolio strategy. There was a high tech company that came to us and said, "We're a mess. We can't even tell our customers what to order because we don't understand it. We have a new product, we can't put it out because
Hmm.
we don't know how to brand it, where it would fit. There's no logic." And so we'd go down there and simplify and restructure and make it have clarity and sense. And 4 years later, they call us back. We're again, in this
They've
mess where
imploded.
it's a mess, and we go in
Yeah.
there again and sort it out and do a lot
David, are
of
you still
demand
getting your hands dirty these
consolidation.
days? Are you still
What?
leading workshops? Are you still getting your hands dirty these days? Are you still
I,
leading
I,
workshops and
I do a
consulting?
lot of podcasts like this one. I do a lot of talks, especially in Asia, through Zoom, and I do a little pro bono work for nonprofits, but really, I have never done much hands-on consulting. I basically write
Wow.
books,
I mean, you are the
and
epitome of
I do. There's some projects at Profit that I support, and
yeah.
I'm sort of give feedback and a sounding board and ideas, but I mostly write books.
I mean, at this point, I mean, we're talking, you're leaving a legacy. And I know that you've written an autobiography um, but like,
Well,
in,
if you and a friend bought one, you double the sales this year. I mean, the Pirate is not a big seller.
but that's not the point. Fair enough. But the point being, the prompt that prompted you to write that was what?
Oh, I just I just wanted to write it. I mean, it's just like all my books. I just decided I want to write it. And
It's a legacy
I
play. You wrote it for your
wrote it,
kids,
I wrote it mostly.
grandkids.
I had no illusions it was ever going to sell any copies, but I wrote it for myself and my grandchildren.
I mean, that is quite the thing just to lead back. So let's just say 50 years from now, if someone picks up your book or a piece of work for the first time, what do you hope they take away?
Well, I really hope that I could influence companies to, um, and therefore the capitalistic system to be more efficient about the way they deal with strategy and to find a way with for brand equity to help them have more successful and more, um, you know, more strategies that just make sense.
Yeah. One of the things that I think about in the work that I do, which is very similar to the work that you do, obviously not to the same level, but like the ultimately, like how can we just help organizations make better decisions? Because I see so many founders, especially young founders, just make bad marketing decisions left and right because they can, because they have access to a credit card and meta ads. And next thing you know, they've ruined their brand, whatever little brand equity they had. So that's just something I keep coming back to. Like, how can we, as practitioners and craftspeople and advocates of great brand, continue to shout that from the top of the mountain?
Yeah.
You
And then, of
understand that.
course, these days where there's the sort of market dynamics have spiraled out of control, just so frenetic and so forth. And so um, it makes you think to the basics, and it makes you think about the importance of breaking through, the importance of gaining access to long-term memory and not just creating noise. And it makes you think
Mm,
about things like events and contests and brand communities and things that aren't just driven by paid media.
that's right. Well, speaking of memories, this is definitely such an incredible memory for me to have this conversation with you, Mr. Aker. For people who are listening who have probably lived underneath a rock in a hole and have never heard about you, where can they find you online? Obviously, Google your name, but do you have a specific social network that you like to stay on?
Yeah, LinkedIn is my where I blog, and
Yeah.
so I'm on LinkedIn, and I have posts every month, and if you go to YouTube and look at me, you can look at some of my talks and some of my podcasts. I just recently posted one on that represented all my ideas on how politicians should communicate
Mm,
better. It's called um, political memory anchors. So if you
mm.
go to and get political memory anchors, you can get my ideas on that. And they contain a lot of things that are going to be useful for all brands because it's all about turning noise into real influence. It's about the importance of of what I call memory anchor, which is either a tagline or slogan, could be a signature story, it could be a visual symbol, it could be a branded program. And
Oh,
you
wow.
want to
Yeah.
have some of those things embedded in people's long-term memory. And you can have all the narratives and all the great arguments, and if you don't have some memory anchors, um, you're not going to really build a brand asset.
Yeah, yeah. Well, for everyone, and I love the idea of the memory anchors. I actually wrote that one down. That's going to live rent free in my head. For everyone listening and watching, we're going to have more from David coming soon because prior to this conversation, we're talking about getting him in a couple of issues. We still have to talk about Branders Fest with him. So there's a lot going to be coming with David in the upcoming year. For everyone else that has shown up and that gave support and love, if you have questions, shoot them my way. Please also subscribe to our Substack because I'm going to do a recap of this episode on our Substack, and that's going to come out early next week. So, David, thanks again for joining us and for spending the morning with us. And any last parting words for everyone watching?
No, but just thanks for having me, and thanks for your contribution to uh, building our branding community.
That's what I'm here for. The voice of branders. We'll see you all next time. This is brandersmagazine.com, and we'll see you later.
Thanks.